Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down just three powerful verses from the book of Isaiah that tell a timeless story, the prophecy of a tyrant's spectacular fall, the world's stunned reaction, and, well, the crimes that sealed his fate. We are diving deep into a prophecy from Isaiah, a really potent taunt aimed at a king who was once unbelievably mighty. His downfall was as shocking as it was complete, so let's really set the scene here. First things first, we need to understand the context. You see, these verses aren't just some random condemnation. They're part of a much larger, very carefully crafted piece of scripture aimed squarely at the king of Babylon. And what's fascinating is that the source material tells us this whole section, starting from verse 4, is basically a taunt song. It's a proverb that zeroes in on the rise and fall of Babylon, predicting the dramatic end of its immense power and, its pride. All right, let's jump right into our first verse, Isaiah 14, verse 15, and see exactly how this epic downfall gets started. The prophecy here is just so direct and absolute. There's no room for interpretation, is there? No matter how powerful he thought he was, no matter how majestic, the king's final destination is laid out in the starkest terms imaginable. So what exactly does the text mean by the pit? Well, it signifies the absolute lowest point, the ultimate depth of ruin. It's a complete 180-degree reversal from the heavenly heights the king claimed for himself, a fall into what the source calls the bottomless pit. So when you boil it all down, verse 15 is all about the ultimate consequence. This isn't just a simple defeat on the battlefield. It's a complete and total fall from grace into the lowest possible state you can think of. A pretty powerful end to his arrogance, right? Okay, so now in verse 16, the camera kind of pulls back a little. The focus shifts from the judgment itself to the reaction of the people who actually get to witness this incredible fall from power. Just try to imagine this scene. You've got these onlookers gathered around, and they have to squint and stare to narrowly look at this fallen king. They're struggling to connect the miserable figure in front of them with the terrifying ruler he used to be. And our source material points out that this intense look, it implies they just can't believe what they're seeing. The change in him is so dramatic that the text actually describes it as next to impossible to even process. It just brilliantly shows you the sheer scale of his fall. This reaction really drives home just how untouchable this king and his golden empire must have seemed. I mean, Babylon was a wonder of the ancient world, a city that felt absolutely invincible, which makes this moment of total collapse all the more jaw-dropping. This all leads to a really crucial question, doesn't it? The shock of the onlookers basically begs for an explanation. What on earth was the source of all his power and the incredible fear he commanded? And that brings us to the last verse we're looking at today, verse 17, which answers that question head-on. It gives us the why, the justification for his downfall, by listing his crimes against the world and its people. This verse, wow, it does not hold back one bit. It lays out a clear, damning indictment against this fallen ruler. It paints this vivid picture of a tyrant who brought nothing but total ruin wherever he went. And what's so clear here is how the verse breaks down his legacy into these three terrible acts of tyranny: a pattern of devastation, utter destruction, and just relentless oppression. What's really interesting is that our source text gives us some concrete history to back this up. Making the world a wilderness points right to events like the destruction of Jerusalem. And that charge of not freeing his prisoners, that's talking about policies like the 70-year captivity of Judah, where escape was literally made impossible. So after all that, what's the big takeaway from this ancient, yet somehow incredibly relevant proverb? What does this story really tell us? When you put these three verses together, they form this perfect, powerful little story. It flows seamlessly from judgment to the reaction and then to the justification. It's a timeless warning about the dangers of unchecked power and pride. And it leaves us with this final, really provocative thought about the nature of power itself. It's a question that echoes from the ancient world right into our world today, asking us all to think about that very fine line between authority and tyranny, and the ultimate price of crossing it.